Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where the Delta pandemic box office still hasn't quite come into focus. While ironically, because of Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit, Black Widow's financial picture is coming very much into focus. And it's all fascinating. And sure enough, once again, bottom line, all the action is at Disney. So let's break it down. We're going to start out with the Black Widow lawsuit before diving into this week's numbers. Now, Johansson wants to go before a jury. She wants a jury trial. But Disney is like, hey, you're the one so upset about contract breaches, but our contract specifically calls that if we have a problem that needs to be solved, it needs to go into private arbitration. Now, when it comes to a jury, I gotta say, I think it's a real toss-up as to who's less sympathetic. But I do believe that Disney, when you get right down to it, has a very solid case. So it makes sense that Scarlett Johansson wants the toss-up with the jury trial because at least there her odds will be 50-50. But this lawsuit has always been about getting behind the iron curtain of streaming stats. Not for Scarlett Johansson. She wants to get paid. She wants her money. Although I don't know if she's necessarily owed the amount she's asking for. We're going to talk about that. But the reason so many people in the industry are backing her and why I think her agency, CAA, convinced her to have this lawsuit is because they want to break through and get numbers. And in that regard, it's already working. Disney revealed late last week that in addition to its global box office, the movie has done $125 million on Disney Plus and PVOD. Now, they could argue that its problem was they were forced to wait so long to release the film. Although, it's funny. Universal claims that Trolls World Tour, which came out right at the beginning of the pandemic, did like $100 million in its first week, 2 weeks, a couple weeks or so. But that was streaming only as well. But it's really interesting. I think that the waiting so long for the movie is going to have is going to be part of the Disney's argument. But anyway, Black Widow, that means it has about $500 million total, and Scarlett Johansson gets a cut of all that. It's not like she's being kept out of the Disney Plus participation. She's saying that the way it was released has kept her from getting what she was owed. Now, sure, $500 million is nowhere near what most Marvel movies gross. But let's keep in mind Black Widow is yet to hit China. I think if it had hit China, maybe it would be closer to what most movies or Marvel movies do. But it might never hit China because it still doesn't have a release date, despite the promise of one from China's Film Commission. Now, is that Disney's fault? Especially when other studios are having trouble getting Chinese release dates for their movies, like The Suicide Squad. That also does not have a Chinese release date yet. Also, Disney pointed out, because they feel Scarlett Johansson is arguing this in the court of public opinion, so they're doing that as well. And they said, hey, Black Widow opened bigger than many non-pandemic MCU movies, including recent ones. How will this all end? What's it looking like? Well, we'll see, but I think that it's important to take a look at the rumors swirling around Emma Stone's Cruella 2 deal, which is said to be the following. At least $10 million upfront for the sequel, topping her $8 million for the first movie, which was at that point her highest payday to date. It's also been rumored that Disney gave her a make-good payment for the first Cruella that's low 8 figures as well. So that means at least $10 million. Far from the extra $50 million that Scarlett Johansson says she's owed. But fascinatingly, likely what Scarlett Johansson probably turned down. I'm sure they offered her a similar make-a-good deal. And I think it's probably what she'll end up having to settle for eventually anyway. She'll end up right where she could have been, and she could have kept Disney as her friend. Now, maybe she could push her settlement to as high as maybe a 20. I think Disney's case is so strong. I was going to say maybe 20 to 30 million, but I think Disney has a very strong case. So maybe she could get 20 million. But is that 20 million worth her burning her relationship with Disney, the biggest studio in town, losing her Tower of Terror movie that she was going to do? Especially when she already got 20 million up front for the film, which Disney revealed, and the whole industry was like, oh, how dare you? It was like glove slaps all around. But anyway, 20 million up front. Scarlett Johansson did get 20 million up front, and she is getting a cut of that 500 million for Black Widow. Clearly, Scarlett Johansson felt that finally getting her own MCU movie was going to be her big payday, like it's been for her male co-stars in the Avengers. And I totally understand her feeling that way. But I don't believe her movie was on par quality-wise with any of those other films. I mean, I think that this lawsuit reflects that Scarlett Johansson just felt this was a gimme instead of having to actually do the work to creatively earn it, right? I mean, she didn't even, as you might recall, promote the film that much. Maybe it's because she was upset about how things were going down, but I think she could have sued anyway. I mean, it's always good to be able to point to that you did everything that you were supposed to do. And also, there's just bad luck It's just bad luck. It's the force majeure clause in any contract. Circumstances beyond prediction and prevention. And a pandemic certainly falls within that category. And that's affecting all Hollywood actors. Scarlett Johansson and her team have accused Disney of misogynistic behavior. But I think in this case, it's something that's affecting everyone. If they did have a jury trial and you were on it, and it was Scarlett Johansson versus Disney, what would you think? And what would you be? What do you think you might decide? And which one would you find like the least or the most sympathetic? All right, now let's take a look at this weekend's box office, where Nice Guys do finish first, as Free Guy had an extraordinary second weekend hold of 34%. Saturday morning, the industry thought it was going to be a 50% hold, which itself was a huge improvement over everybody thought it was going to drop like Jungle Cruise, which was very strong. Most movies have been dropping, big movies have been dropping around 70% in their second weekends. Jungle Cruise dropped somewhere around 50%. And Free Guy, look at that, 34. That's incredible. Free Guy won't be available on PVOD until late September. Also, let's be fair, it benefited from pretty much no competition. But Free Guy won't be available to watch digitally. You'll have to buy it. It won't be available to stream at no extra cost. But that again will be late September, and it could do solid business at the box office until then, or at least until fellow Disney flick Shang-Chi hits. Candyman is an R-rated horror film, so that's a different audience. There's still room for both of them in that marketplace. But despite its great hold, we're still looking at a second weekend of about 20 million and a domestic total of 60 million. At the rate that it's going, Free Guy is like Jungle Cruise and will probably settle at around 100 million total domestic. Now, that's better than most other pandemic movies. So far, only 4 have managed to cross the century mark, and only 2 others have come even close. And not that close. And so much for theaters, by the way, being a magic bullet, as Paw Patrol managed to be the best of the weekend's new litter. And while Reminiscence is also, Reminiscence is a day-and-date release on HBO Max. But wow, nobody liked it, and as you can see, it totally cratered at the box office. Nobody cared from any of these movies either, though, except for Paw Patrol. So you could argue quality of content as well. So we're still waiting on Candyman and Shang-Chi. Those are really going to be the two, our next canaries in the pandemic box office. And I think after you see the opening weekends for both those films, and maybe even I think the opening weekend will be very telling. And, I don't even know if studios will wait to see what their second weekends are before they have to make tough decisions about doing more digital day-and-date releases, which we're already seeing happen for some Halloween family movies, or pushing their films back yet again. That's why CinemaCon is such a question mark this week. Studios aren't sure what movies they'll be giving to exhibitors in the coming months, which is what CinemaCon is all about, by the way. It's not a convention for fans, it's an industry trade show for theater owners. There's even been some debate over the past month as to whether or not they should be even having CinemaCon this year with COVID the way it is. Yet, of course, if theater owners won't show up to watch a movie, how can they ask you to do that? Still, Disney isn't sending anyone. No executive or stars will be in attendance in person when they screen Shang-Chi, and they are not putting on a presentation. So we'll see what happens at CinemaCon. You might get a surprise, but as I tweeted earlier today, manage those expectations. As for the rest of the top 10, the latest on the Suicide Squad, which I know many of you are eagerly watching, is that in its third weekend, it dropped a little over 50% after a 70% drop last weekend, and it will likely end up with a domestic total close to fellow Warner Brothers HBO Max day-and-date releases Space Jam 2 and The Conjuring. That's not bad company, but DC movies are supposed to be stronger than that. But there is a pandemic going on. I know many of you are pointing that out. But these are still very disappointing numbers. Globally, things look even bleaker, especially, again, as I already mentioned, the Suicide Squad can't get a Chinese release date either. Now let's move over to streaming, starting with Nielsen's numbers for the week of July 19th. Virgin River, still dominating. What a juggernaut. Some of you told me it was like a Pollyanna wholesome kind of show, and so I can see why that would be very popular. I think that's like some semi-conservative entertainment that sometimes Hollywood doesn't really cater to, but when they do, they really show up. Yellowstone is a similar show. I think that's, if you watch Virgin River, am I getting it right in terms of, the comparisons? Now, Loki, which is over at this point, it came back down to earth with its numbers. It was usually posting really high numbers, but it didn't have a very strong hold. It still did incredible, though. I'm very impressed, though, to see the movies that made us crack the top 10. So happy for that show. It's amazing. So, and this new season, fantastic. But I think it's also interesting that competing spin-off show behind the attraction for Disney Plus, and that's the whole reason they released another season of the movies that made us that week to compete, that didn't crack the top 10. That's also an amazing show. I'm surprised more people aren't watching that. Disney Plus is a weird market space. But speaking of Disney Plus, over in movies, Luca floated back up to number 1. Very impressive, and makes Disney's decision to offer it at no extra cost on the streaming service make sense. You know what else makes sense? While Pixar might be insulted, it occurred to me that since Luca is an animated movie, in animation there is no profit participation for talent in front of, or behind the camera or behind the microphone. And so they don't have to, with live action, they have to honor back-end deals. They have to honor that, so that's why they have to offer it at cost, an extra cost on the service. But why not bolster your streaming service with this premium content at no extra cost if there are no deals to honor? So with that in mind, and this kind of domination, and a really strong response from critics and viewers alike, Pixar should not be insulted and should feel really good about things. I'm sure they're like, we still don't feel good about it, but at least now they can understand it. Netflix's Blood Red Sky did some nice business with its debut, while a couple other movies are also holding nicely. But wow, the real story here is that the Twilight Saga hit Netflix and dominated. Wow, what an audience that still exists for that. I'm shocked. And don't be surprised if the streamer greenlights some kind of Twilight spinoff as a result, or it ends up somewhere. There's still an audience for Twilight. There ain't no way Robert Pattinson or Kristen Stewart is going back there, but maybe they could do something with their daughter. I think there's definitely something there. As for Netflix this week, Jason Momoa shot to number 1 with his new movie, while the Loud House movie, also new, is right behind it, with new series The Chair not doing quite as well, but still cracking the top 10. Look at that, new episodes everywhere. They really just keep rolling out new content to keep you on the service. And that Bake Squad poster frame, by the way, is amazing. Still didn't watch the episode, though, but did anyone watch that? How'd they make that cake or that pie? It looks amazing. All right, on iTunes, Snake Eyes hit PVOD, I think, trying to get ahead of Shang-Chi. And it's doing respectable business, but it's no match for The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, finally available to rent. Perhaps those waiting for Free Guy to hit PVOD are scratching their Ryan Reynolds itch here. They're like, I can't see him in movies, but I'll watch him at home. Stillwater, which fizzled in theaters, is doing good business here at $20 to rent, same with The Green Knight. Now, this is also interesting. Snake Eyes only had a 25-day window, and Stillwater and The Green Knight only had 20-day windows. What? That's not 17 days or 45 days. Which shows that if movies drop off the face of the box office, the studios will rush them to PVOD faster, which undercuts this theaters-only model, because apparently, if none of us go, they put it on streaming faster. What? All right, so by the way, The Courier is doing so well because it's a 99-cent rental right now. If you didn't watch that movie, get on that. That's an amazing movie at an amazing price. As for this coming week, Candyman finally hits theaters, and it will be hitting theaters only. For how long? Who knows? They're really playing around with this window. The embargo for that lifts on Wednesday. Then as for streaming, Netflix debuts its Witcher anime movie tomorrow. I posted my review on Friday. Very good. Very good movie. While American Horror Story's new season premieres on Wednesday, along with the latest season of Archer and Netflix's new series, Clickbait. Thursday, season 2 of The Other Two switches from Comedy Central to HBO Max, while on Friday, Jason Momoa is busy, booked and busy. Season 2 hits Apple TV Plus, and Netflix's movie of the week, oh, people are going to be talking about this. It's the gender-swapped He's All That, where TikTok star Addison Rae will see if she can draw a crowd as an actress. You might hate watch her, but numbers are numbers, and if you give her a big debut, she will get another movie. It might only be on another streaming service, but another movie is another movie. So we'll see what happens. I suspect that that's going to do very well. If it doesn't, that'll be a big story in and of itself. We'll talk about it next week. All right, so that's this week's Movie Math. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.